Yeah.
So a little bit of our goals for our session. We're going to start off briefly just talking about why OERs, and then we're going to move into creating a remixing map that will really set the structure for developing the course. We're going to take some time to find content as well as build an OER. And a good portion of the time will be independent work time. What we're really expecting from this workshop is that you're going to have time to actually build and construct your textbook with a lot of support. So when we've gone other places, we spend a lot of time, doing a lot of talking. But really the focus for this time around is going to be to actually help you construct and be able to provide resources for you. So why OERs? We think about OERs, we think about material that is openly licensed, and we think about, different resources. So this is no longer just about a textbook, but it's about text, it's about video, it's about animations, it's about photography or images. So when we think about OERs, it brings a lot of benefits from us than just thinking about a textbook, but being able to think about what are some of those other things that can create an engaging learning environment. We know that students, at least our students, don't buy textbooks, right? And they don't buy textbooks for a lot of reasons. They don't buy textbooks because of the cost. A lot of times they're waiting on their financial aid. They're trying to get a reserve copy of the book from the library. And as a result of not being prepared on day one, like some of you guys mentioned and the provost mentioned, it sets the trajectory for them not to be successful. So why do we have these OERs? Well, one reason why is to make college affordable, which is really important, right? But for us, probably the most important is to create a sense of equity. Right? So students having that material on day one, we recognize that if they have that material on day one, then they're going to be in the same spot as everyone else. And for students that don't have that material on day one, they're going to be in a situation where they're trying to play catch up. And that puts them on a trajectory that's less likely to be successful. Another benefit to having OERs, or open education resources, is to promote inclusion, to be able to make sure that students can see people that look like themselves in the textbooks, right? And to be able to actually be able to see images that represent their culture, that represent theirs, which is absolutely fantastic. Beyond just seeing themselves, though, OERs allows us to show the way in which they see themselves. So rather than just having, for example, African Americans presented as athletes and entertainers, there's the ability to show, us as scientists, as engineers, as philosophers. So we get to be able to create the type of engagement that we want with them, which is really exciting as well. So tomorrow, we're going to spend quite a bit of time learning how to add images, add video, and to be able to make sure that we have that inclusion and that diversity within the textbooks. One of the phrases, I think that I've heard quite a bit is that, when you can see yourself in something, it's much easier to be it, right? And for me, growing up as a computer science major, right, I didn't see a lot of people that look like me in my classes, and I didn't see people that look like me in my textbooks, right? But being able to create a structure where it says, hey, I can actually have students that look like me in this book, and students begin to see themselves as something that's really powerful. And the last thing that I think I'm probably equally excited about is the ability to improve pedagogy. So when we think about OER, when you think about OERs, you think about, or at least I used to think about this idea of let's just create something that's adequate enough so students don't have to pay, right?
Yeah.
And there are some challenges still, like in information technology, technology is changing every couple of years, and these certifications are changing. And accounting, like Flo mentioned, there are updates that are happening all the time, right? And it is difficult, right? There's standards set in different states by the nursing board in terms of what is acceptable and what's not. But initially, when I thought about open educational resources, I said, let me just hold my nose and do this so these students can actually have zero cost instructional material. But now my philosophy is starting to change quite a bit. I've gone from holding my nose to thinking, all right, this is something that can actually improve pedagogy. And how did that happen? Well, it happened because we can actually have greater inclusion. We can have better representation, which is extremely powerful. But beyond that, the LibreText platform has what we call a remixer tool. And we're going to go over that today. And what the remixer tool is, it allows you to be able to take information from anywhere within the platform and organize it the way that you want to. So one of the examples I'll share with you guys later on today is I teach a project management class, or I taught a project management class, right? And with that class, it's just not about project management. It's project management related to information technology. So I wanted to pull information related to information technology. I needed to pull information related to project management, which came from the business area. I needed to pull information regarding technical writing because students needed to respond to an RFP. I needed to pull information from group dynamics and communications. So with the LibreText platform, I have access to all of the libraries within LibreText. And I can make that first chapter, Introduction to Information Systems, the second chapter, map the standards of the PMP certification, have a chapter on group dynamics, technical writing, respond to an RFP, and I can put those in the order that I want to put them in. Not only can I do that though, I can also go in and say, I like the way they wrote this particular part of it, right? But I think my students would understand it better if I changed the language this way for my students, right? So guess what? I can go in there and change the information the way that I want to. So not only can I adopt the information, I can actually adapt the information and make changes and say it the way that I want to say it. And lastly, if they really just don't have the type of information that I want, I can do two things. I can find other open educational resources and ask them to bring it into the LibreText platform, or I have the ability to actually create the information that I want, put it in the LibreText platform, and then it can be accessible to everyone. So when I think about OERs now, it's no longer about just holding my nose and getting through it, right? So students can save money. I think about OERs in terms of improved pedagogy because I can represent the students the way that I want them. I can actually adopt the content as it is. I can adapt it. I can make changes to it. I can reorder the content. So I can put chapter 1 here. I can move this information to chapter 2. I can move this in chapter 5 the way that I want to. So I think now about OERs, improve pedagogy. And also, we won't be talking about it in this session, but there's a homework manager. And we will be talking about checks for understanding. So Deborah's going to cover something called H5P. So when you actually go in and you have the students do the reading, you can actually give them questions, true, false, multiple choice, drag and drop, where you can check for understanding as well. So I'm moving from holding my nose to actually saying, this is actually better than anything that we've used before.
So I feel like we're sort of preaching to the choir, you know? Why OERs? Hopefully you already are excited about it. Why else would you be here? That you can see it's about, you know, equity, diversity, inclusion. It's about saving the students money. It's about better pedagogy. But you know what I think for me, back when COVID hit, we all got a surprise about education. We were like, we were not ready for it. And I felt like, wow, we missed the boat in education as far as being ready for things and looking forward. And so I feel like we really need to be aware of that. So why OERs, before COVID hit, we were like this, not a problem. We're all together, face to face, it's great. And then COVID hit and, all of a sudden we had masks and 6 feet of distance and you couldn't talk, you couldn't touch, all this stuff going on. We went from teaching like this, like all together, face to face, which I'm so glad we're back to face to face. We went to this. I don't know about you, but we were on spring break when COVID hit and they said, don't come back, switch everything to online. Everybody was like, what? Thing. What a mess it was. I don't know about for you, but for here, it was a mess. Faculty didn't know how to teach online. They didn't have the resources. We did a lot of trying to play catch up. And I felt like, wow, if we had had OERs in place, what a difference it would make. And I feel like, are we prepared for something like that to happen again? I feel like some people just went back to, okay, well, it's over, back to status quo. Let's get books. Let's go back to the classroom. What did we learn from it?
Some people didn't.
Yeah, right? Some people didn't. And you see the numbers here. Some people still aren't. They're just not. They're going back to what is comfortable. And one thing about education, you can't stay in that which is comfortable. You just can't. You've got to be willing to grow, to change, to try something new. So we've got to be aware of this changing educational landscape. I don't know about you. I wish we had free enrollment, but we've had lower enrollment at our college because of it. We were doing more online options to help capture some of the students. We're really listening to what the students need and what they're asking for. And we really have to look at textbook accessibility. Because it was difficult. We had that whole supply chain problem that happened, and then people couldn't get to the bookstore. And then, we just had all these problems. And so we have to think about that as we, in education, say that we are lifelong learners. Are we? Are we really? Are we doing something different? Are we changing? Are we growing? So I feel like that's a part of why OERs. And what should the response be? We've got to reflect. We have to I didn't expect anybody to have a crystal ball and to know that COVID was coming. Nobody knew that was coming. That hit us all blindsided. But now that it has happened, what do we learn from it? As we reflect, what can we do better? What do we have to change? What do we have to look at so that it doesn't hit us like that again, totally unprepared and not ready to move forward to support our students in any way that we can? Again, why OERs? It is this education is changing. It does get to cost and accessibility for students. This is the University of Maryland Global Campus, and they have on their site more than just no-cost textbooks. They make a big point. You don't have to buy expensive textbooks. You can take courses totally online with online no-cost online resources. So we're getting also a little bit more competition out there. Other colleges and universities are starting to say, hey, we can take some of your business. We can do it online. So we have got to fill a need for our students or they're going to find it somewhere else. So we alluded to this. We said it earlier this morning. This is what PGCC's website looks like. We have this zero cost textbooks page and we say we've saved $5 million and we continue to change that as we continue to do more for our students. But this is what we want it to look like. We're getting there where we have certificates and degrees at PGCC that are totally OERs. You will not have to purchase a book if you do not want to. It's available for students if they want to create a book and have something paid. LibreText will do that for them at a low cost if that's the way they want to learn, but they could do it without spending any money. That is our goal and our vision. So what are you thinking about at your college? What is your vision? I want you to think about that as you work through this with us, because yes, you can do your course, but then how do you grow it? How do you make sure that it has an impact? How do you make sure that you sort of catch other people on fire and get them excited about this so that the thing continues to grow? Because here at the college, we've been resting the OER implementation on 1 or 2 people. And I'm like, we've got to figure, we can't keep doing it.
Right.
It's going to fail. It is sustainability. You've got to grow it. You've got to spread the knowledge, and there've got to be a better base of people who can say, OER is the way to go. Here's how you do it. So I love that you're here. I love that you're getting this, but what is your plan to go back and spread it so that it grows at your college? So what's next? Well, we're take a little switch from this. We're going to talk about LibreText before we go into the creating the remixing map. But we'll talk about later this afternoon, creating the remixing map. When you're creating your book, what does that look like? I've heard it several times, and I totally believe we've got to create quality. We're not just, oh, we're doing something to know. I want quality resources for my students. So what does that look like? My background is education, so I am very much into the book needs to match the outcomes. So you need to make sure that it is aligned. It is not about the amount of stuff.
Right.
It is about have they mastered the content? And if they can do that with a video, if they can do that with more of a podcast listening, if they can do that with reading a short article. When I got my master's, it was ridiculous the amount of reading I was required to do. Ask me how much of that I remember. The thing that I remember was when I had to present in front of a group and I had to do something. That's the one that has been impactful, and I have remembered it forever. All those books they made me read, they are like doorstops in my house now. I mean, like, what do you do with that?
Right.
So we've got to think about education differently. It is not about buying a big textbook and reading this textbook and then regurgitating all that information on a test or a quiz, and then they forget it 2 weeks later. How is that useful for them? So we've got to rethink what this education actually looks like. So that's what we'll be doing. And then we'll be giving you some time to build and create your own OER as we help you put in those interactivity pieces such as videos and audio components and interactive quizzes and formative assessment so the students can track their own learning. Another thing that I learned from the whole COVID incident was that we were not creating learners, because when they were now on their own a little bit more, they didn't know how to learn. They didn't know how to do anything.
No.
They weren't paying attention in class because now they're online. They weren't taking notes because nobody was standing over them paying attention. They weren't focused because they had other things open. I've had students say, yeah, I'm at work right now. I can't really talk. You're supposed to be in my class.
Yes,
what do you mean
right,
you are at
right.
work?
Yep.
That is a problem. So we're not creating learners. They've got to be self-motivated, self-regulated learners. Because if I haven't helped them to do that, once they leave my class, what do? So hopefully this time has helped you to rethink how you learn and how you can help your students as they learn and grow. So I want to stop a minute there for questions, comments, reflections, and a couple introductions before we go into our next piece.
I have a question.
I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording. Go ahead.